Introduction. A stranger outside I knew I had no business feeling that kind of heat at 58. But watching him work, the sheer strength in his arms, the way the sun bounced off his sweat-slicked skin, it stirred something in my thought had long gone dormant. Was standing by my bedroom window, my Robert barely clinging to my shoulder, when Mark, 25 and deliciously young, lifted his eyes from his work and stared straight into mine. He smirked. He knew it was not the first time I had seen a man work outside my house, but it was the first time my thighs betrayed me just from watching. I did not look away. Neither did he. And in that single lingering stare, something old and in me cracked wide open. Welcome back to American Affairs, where the loneliest hearts can find themselves in the most unexpected and complicated situations. Today's story is about a woman Wothed. She was just hiring a landscaper but soon discovered he was part of a much deeper, more a plan that would change everything. She thought she knew about love, loyalty, and betrayal. Let's begin. My name is Josephine, and I am a retired nurse. I live alone in the snowy, quiet corners of Anchorage, Alaska. Life is quiet here, perhaps too quiet. My husband left me 10 years ago for a woman 20 years younger than me. Since then, it has just been me, my wine, and the low humming silence of a who's full of regrets. Until last week when I finally decided to hire the daily routine landscaping company to fix my frozen pipes and the ruined neglected backyard. And that is how Mark entered me life. He was 6'2", his skin rich like dark coffee, his eyes too bold for such a young man. He had this confident, almost cocky smile that made you feel as though he had already undressed you in his mind. When he first stepped out of his work truck, wearing those muddy boots, a tool belt swinging low on his hips and a thin tank top that clung to every single ridge of muscle on his chest, I felt something deep inside me twitch. He introduced himself with a deep smooth voice that made my knees ache. "Miss Josephine," he'd said, "I'm here for the ground, though it looks like the house might need some care, too." The nervo theme I had laughed politely, booed something about. The intense, unwavering way he looked at me had made my skin prickle with a new, unfamiliar heat. I had offered him some lemonade, and had then watched him from my kitchen window as he worked the frozen earth like Ithod somehow wronged him. Every powerful thrust of his shovel into the hard soil, I watched with parted lips. He eventually took off his tank top, and that was when he caught me staring. He hoodwinked and I had frozen. He went back to digging. But something fundamental had changed in that single shared moment. Some invisible wall between us had shattered. And I suddenly realized with a jolt that was both thrilling and terrifying just how long it had been since a man had looked at me like that. That night, I could not sleep. I kept hearing the sharp metal of his shovel against the rocks, the heavy slap of his boots on the snow. That deep, confident voice, saying, "The house might need some care, too." And it knew with a certainty that shamed method if I was not careful. I would leave that boy completely, utterly wreck me. The next morning, as I stepped outside to check on the progress of the yard, he said something that made my stomach twist into a tight, cold knot. "Did you like what you saw yesterday, Miss Josephine?" I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying my best to force a casual, dismissive smile. He stepped closer, then so close he could smell the intoxicating mix of his sweet and a clean piniented soap. Here, feeling I couldn't ignore, looked straight into my eyes and whispered, "You were not the only one fantasizing last night." And just like that, the ice in Alaska and the ice that had been frozen around my heart for decades started to melt. Inside me, the way he had said it so confidently sent a fresh heat wave up my spine. I stood there, stunned like an old brittle tree by a sudden unexpected lightning. My heart pounded inside my chest, so loudly I thought he could surely hear. Mark's eyes locked onto mine with no shimmy. No hesitation, only the kind of raw animal hunger that you do not expect from a boy that age. It was raw, and it was dangerous. I looked around at the snow-covered yard, at the quiet, empty street, at the neighbors' blinds that were still drawn. Then I looked back at them. "You're bold," I said, trying to shake it all off with a light, dismissive chuckle. He just shrugged and smirked again. That's some crooked, knowing grin that made me feel as if I were wearing nothing but my thin robe in a crowded church pew. "You like what I see," he said. "You liked what you saw. So, what are we pretending for?" I should have turned away then. I should have told him to get back to his work and reminded myself that I was 58 years old, not some foolish young girl easily swept away by pretty muscles and smooth, confident talk. But instead, I just said, "Come inside. I have some more lemonade." We walked in through the kitchen door. I could feel the heat rising from my chest to my face as it poured the drink. my hand shaking slightly. He stood just behind me, close enough for me to feel the radio-ting warmth of his body. He did not touch me, but the very absence of his touch was somehow worse than a simple graze. It was a palpable, simmering temptation, between us. I handed him the glass. He took it, but his fingers, I noticed, deliberately, brushed against mine, and that was all it took. My breath caught in my throat. He sipped the drink, then placed it down on the counter without ever breaking our eye contact. "You ever get lonely out here, Miss Josephine?" he asked, his voice a low, intimate murmur. "Sometimes," he whispered back. "But I manage. You shouldn't have to," he said. And then he stepped forward. My back hit the cool kitchen counter, the edge of it digging into my spine, but all I could feel was his heat, his scent, the hidden glances, overwhelming, intoxicating possibility of him. "Mark," I started to say, but Helen did, brushing his soft, warm lips along the side of my neck, like a question, waiting for an answer. I did not speak. I just tilted my head. And that was permission enough. It was not delicate. It was not rushed. It was the kind of raw, desperate connection that comes after years and years of a profound, soul-deep loneliness. One, two hungry, isolated souls crash into each other, desperate to feel anything real again. It was a woman rediscovering the fire she thought had long since been extinguished. I led him to the living room. He pulled off his shirt again. My God, those holders. And he kissed me like I was not 58, like I was not broken, like I was not forgotten. He kissed me like I was desirable. I let go of all my hesitation. Then whatever name the others, the world had given him, a boy, a worker, a nobody, Inno understood with a clarity that was almost a relief that it had little to do with his size, his age, and everything to do with his presence, with the quiet, confident command he carried, with how in his strong young arms I felt completely, utterly, consumed, not just touched but seen. Every moment with him made the biting Alaskan cold outside simply vanish. Me thoughts blurred, my breath caught in my throat, and I forgot everything, absolutely everything, except for thorough, undeniable intensity we now shared. He made me forget my name. He made me forget that I had ever cried, all alone in this very room, and just when I thought I had given him everything I had to give, when a powerful overwhelming emotion surged through me so powerfully, it threatened to break me wide open. A knock, a sharp, insistent knock in the front door. We both froze. He stood up quietly, still panting, his chest rising and falling as he adjusted his jeans. I scrambled for my robe, me own heart now pounding harder than I thought before. Not from pleasure, but from a pure, unadulterated panic. "Who's that?" he whispered. I peeked through the curtain of the living room window. My neighbor Sandra, she was holding a large casserole in his hand, wearing that nosy, intrusive smile she always wore when she wanted something new to gossip about. Shirt was still on my living room floor. His muddy boots were near the stairs. If she saw any of this, the story would spread through our small, quiet town, faster than a wildfire. I took a deep, steadying breath, tightened my robe, and walked to Theodore, a completely, utterly forced smile plastered on my face. "Josephine, what I found on his phone," Sandra chirped as I opened the door. "He made some of my famous turkey casserole, and I figured you might like some company. Oh, how sweet of you, Sandra," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "But I'm not feeling very well today." She squinted her eyes, trying to peer past me into the house. "Is someone here with you?" she asked. I forced a small cough. No, just a bit of a flu, think. Maybe another day." She reluctantly handed me the heavy, warm dish. As soon as I had shut the door, Eeks hold hard and slid down to the floor, my legs no longer able to support me. When I turned around, Mark was leaning against the stair rail, his own shirtno in his hand, his eyes still burning with a mixture of desire and a new shared fear. "She knows something," he whispered. He just smiled again, that same infuriatingly confident smile, and said, "Let her. What we have, Josephine, isn't something you hide forever." That night, I could not sleep, and then next morning, I woke up wrapped in the heavy, lingering weight of everything we had shared. His presence, his scent, it still lingered in the very air of my house, a mixture of pine and sweat. But alongside it, a new cold rush of truth, he could no longer ignore, now crept in. But it was not just guilt that had kept me awake all night. It was how incredibly, dangerously alive I now felt. I was supposed to feel a profound, soul-deep shame. I was supposed to look in the mirror and be disgusted with myself. Instead, It looked into my own eyes and saw something completely, utterly unexpected. A woman reborn. Still, I knew the whispers would come. Sandra's coincidental visit was no coincidence at all. She had seen something, or at least had sensed it, and in a small, quiet town like this, sensing is more than enough to start a fire. The next morning, I found Mark in the backyard again, shirtless, shoveling snow as if nothing at all had happened between us, as though my own legs had not trembled beneath his powerful grip, as though meon quiet, desperate moans had not echoed off the living room walls just day before. But when he looked up at him from beneath his slicked brow and smiled, that same knowing smile, ich knew better. I walked outside in silence, my arms crossed tightly over my chest, the cold morning air biting at my skin. He leaned on his shovel. Confrontation and denial. You look like you didn't sleep well. I didn't, I answered. I was thinking about what we did. No, I said, a new strange suspicion dawning in my mind. About who we really are. He looked confused then, but it was a lie. I saw it. The brief, almost imperceptible flicker of something else, something hidden in his eye. Come inside, I told him. We need to talk. We sat in the kitchen. I poured coffee for both of us. He drank hastily, but he would not meet my gaze. You came to Italy into my life, Mark, I began. You flirted like it was a first. You touched me, like you already knew my body. Still, he said nothing. Then I said the thing that had been keeping me awake all night. You know my sister, don't you? That made him flinch. I put my coffee cup down. My sister Denise. The one who moved to Fairbanks 10 years ago. The one who always said she had run into a young boy who reminded her so much of my ex-husband. I never thought much of it at the time. But, now, the way you speak, the way you seem to know me, you are not here by accident, are you? He sighed then, and the truth, the incredible, unbelievable oath poured out of him like spilled whiskey on my polished kitchen floors. Denise, she hired me, he confessed. Not to seduce you, Josephine, but to check on you to make sure you were still living. She said you had locked yourself away in this house for years after your husband left, that you were fading. She paid me to take this landscaping job to talk to you, to try and make you smile, and the rest. I asked, my own voice no trembling with a new confusing emotion. That was not part of her plan. He whispered, but I meant every single touch, every single kiss, Josephine. I didn't want to fall for you, but the more I saw you, the more I wanted to be the man who reminded you that you are not dead yet. Tears, hot and unexpected, sprang into the truth comes out my own eyes. Not from a sense of betrayal, but from sheer overwhelming pain of having been so invisible for so long that my own sister had to hire a stranger to bring me back to life. I stood up then. I did not know if he wanted to scream at him or to kiss him again. You played me, I said. I woke you, he replied. And there was a profound, undeniable truth in both our statements. We stood in a shared heavy silence. The only sound in the room was the steady rhythmic tick of the old wall clock and the sound of the wind scraping against window pane. Finally, I whispered, I do not need a boy to save me. Mark had stepped closer, then, his own eyes no filled with a raw, desperate sincerity. He took my hand in his and said, then let me just love you instead. I never saw him again after that week. He left Anchorage for good. Maybe he could not face what we had done. Or maybe, just maybe, Denise had carried him off. Her mission in its own strange, complicated way accomplished. But I kept memory and the lesson. Infidelity is not always about a simple sordid lust. Sometimes, it is about the profound echoing silence in an empty house. It is about the fire you thought was gone forever and the one unexpected person strikes the match to remind you that it still after all this time burns. I did not regret letting someone pass through my carefully constructed walls that day. What I regretted was ever for a single moment believing that essential part of me, the part so full of a deep profound passion, a radiating warmth, and a desperate, human need to be wanted, had to stay buried forever. Even at 58.